Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions. Obviously I am not still fully recovered. Ooh, that's bright. But I'm going to see how this will go. Okay, this is going to be my reading for Overlord Light Novel, Volume 1, Part 7. And this is where we last left off. Are the NPCs I've met programs? No. They were beings with consciousness just like humans. It was impossible to capture such subtle emotions with code. He needed to assume that they were no longer programs, but had somehow become equivalent to humans. Oh, that's not good, because now this throws a whole monkey wrench into everything. Well, then again, it's probably better for him anyway. And what is this world? That was unclear. Considering Idrisil's magic existed, it would be valid to suppose he was inside the game, but taking into account the previous answer, that couldn't possibly be the case. That said, it was either the game world or some other world, one of the two. Not that either made any sense. How should I conduct myself? He'd confirmed that he could use his powers, as he could in Yggdrasil. So, if all the NPCs and monsters in the Great Tomb of Nazarick were also based on Yggdrasil data, he would have no enemies. The problem would be if there was something not from Yggdrasil. But all he could do was cross that bridge when he came to it. For now, he had to just act with the dignity of a ruler, assuming he could muster such a thing. What's the plan? Work to gather information. He didn't know what this world was, and at the moment he was like an ignorant tourist. He needed to keep his wits about him and cautiously gather as much information as he could. Say this is some other world. Should I try to get back to mine? Good question. Me personally, I would say no. Because from what I've heard about his world, his actual home, it was bad. So very bad. I would never want to go back to a world like that. I'd rather stay there. If he'd had any friends, he'd probably try to go back. If his parents were still alive, he'd risk his life to find a way back. If he'd had a family to take care of, or a lover, but he had none of those things. He went to the office, worked, came home, and slept. Up until now, he'd logged on to Yggdrasil and keep things ready in case any of his guildmates wanted to come back, but he didn't even have that anymore. Was there any point in going back to such a world? But if he could get back, then he knew he should put in the effort. One could never have too many options. The world outside the tomb could very well be hell. I don't think so. It'll be hell for anybody who crosses your path, that's for sure. Okay, what do I do? Among Us' lonely words to him self-evaporated into the air. Part 4. The primal fire elemental's gigantic body disappeared as if melting into the air, and the heat that had been thrown around the area rapidly dissipated. Amunga also felt the bond of dominance he'd been vaguely aware of break. The primal fire elemental had extraordinary destructive powers and stamina, but for Aura, who demonstrated impressive evasive actions and had complete immunity to the fire damage that had been hitting everything in the area, it might as well have been target practice. Of course, if she had gotten hit, she would have lost a significant portion of her health. But Mare, as a druid, would never let that happen. He used an appropriate mix of buffs and debuffs to support her. Their style of fighting was a magnificent division of roles between forward and rear positions. Amunga was struck both by that and how raw the action I cannot talk. By how raw the action had felt. It had been a real fight, not something from a game. Magnificent. You're both wonderful. Achilda smiled at his heartfelt words of admiration. Thank you, Lord Amunga. It's been a while since we've gotten such a workout. The two of them casually wiped the sweat from their faces, but the moment they did, it beaded up again and began to drip down their tan skin. Amunga silently opened his item box and took something out for the first time in this world. The bottomless pitcher of water. Oh, that would be very handy. Yggdrasil had systems for eating and drinking, or eating and thirst, etc., but since Amunga was undead, none of them applied to him, so he had never used the items himself. He'd been using it for his mounts. The pitcher was made out of a transparent material that seemed like glass and was filled to the brim with fresh water. Perhaps due to how cold the water was, countless droplets had condensated on the outside of the container. Next, he took out 2 clean glasses, filled them, and offered them to the twins. Ora, Mare, please drink this. What? We couldn't possibly, Lord Munga. Yeah, we don't need to trouble you for that. I can make water with my magic. Ora waved her hands in polite refusal, and Mare shook his head quickly back and forth. Seeing them like this made Munga wince. Oh, come on, it's water! Just a small token of my thanks for all your hard work. Oh. Ora and Mare, blushing nervously, reached out their hands to take the glasses. Thank you, Lord Munga. I can't believe you're pouring drinks for us. Does it really make you that happy? This time Ora didn't refuse, but took the glass in both hands and gulped it down. The movement of her throat was clearly visible, and water that overflowed from the corners of her lips ran down her lustrous neck and disappeared into her chest. Mare, meanwhile, held the cup in one hand and took measured sips. The difference in their personalities was made abruptly apparent just from the way they drank. Watching them, Munga brought a hand to his throat. It felt like there was a membrane stretched directly over his cervical spine. He hadn't felt thirsty since entering this body, or tired. He understood that it was only natural for an undead to not feel any of those things, but the idea of not being human anymore seemed like it had to be a joke. He felt around his body some more. Skin, flesh, blood vessels, nerves, organs. He was missing all manner of things. He had a body made solely of bone. He'd known that, but now he groped around so it would sink in. His sense of touch was slightly dull compared to when he was human, almost like there was a thin cloth between him and anything he wanted to touch. Well, yeah, 'cause usually you can touch things better because you have nerves and nerve endings in your fingers, and skin and flesh. So it makes sense that you don't have that anymore. Meanwhile, his other senses performed outstandingly. His hearing and vision were extremely sharp. Since his body was built entirely of bones, it seemed like it could break at any moment, but he also had the sense that each bone was more solid than steel. Although this body was completely different from his old one, there was a strange satisfaction and sense of fulfillment knowing it was his. Perhaps that was why he wasn't frightened by his transformation. Want another glass? He held up the bottomless pitcher and offered once the children had finished their water. Nope, that was enough for me. I see. Mare, how about you? Oh, I'm okay. My throat's not dry anymore. Munga nodded, took the glasses back, and put them away into the air. I thought you were more scary, Lord Munga, Ora said softly. Oh, really? I can be scarier if you like. No, I like you better like this. Way better. Then I'll stay like this. Ora's animated response had thrown him off a bit. You're not this nice only to us, are you? Munga didn't know how to respond to her quiet murmurs, so he just petted her on the head several times. She was like a puppy presented with its favorite food. Mare looked on jealously. Suddenly they heard a voice. Oh, am I the first? It sounded younger than one might expect from the tone. At the same time, a shadow spread across the ground, rose up out of it, and took on the shape of a door. Then someone walked slowly through. Her whole body was wrapped in a soft-looking raven black ball gown with a full wide skirt. She covered up on top with a bolero cardigan featuring frills and ribbons. Add to all that her fingerless lace gloves, and almost all her skin was hidden from view. Only her shapely face, unparalleled was the right word to describe it, was visible. Its almost waxy white skin exposed. Her long silver hair was gathered to one side and up so not a strand of it fell on her face. Her crimson eyes had a weirdly jubilant look to them. Sheltir! Oh dear. This is gonna be awkward when it gets to the point where he leaves and Sheltir and Albedo start arguing. Oh god. She was 14 or possibly younger, though there was still some child in her, and her beauty was born of that mix of cuteness and adult attractiveness. One thing that was out of balance, however, was how big her chest was for her age. Sheltir, why are you patting? That ain't gonna help. No one's gonna believe that at some point. Teleportation is restricted in Nazarick for a reason. don't just go using a gate. You entered the arena the normal way, so couldn't you have just kept walking, Shaltir? An exasperated voice sounded right next to Momonga. The icy tone had nothing of the puppyishness of just a moment ago. On the contrary, it was full to overflowing with hostility. Next to Aura, Mare began trembling again. It was probably wise of him to be inching away from his sister. Yeah, those two will get along. Even Momonga was a bit alarmed by the sudden change in her. The girl Shaltir, who had arrived using the highest level of teleportation magic, cast not so much a glance at Aura, but stood squirming a bit before Momonga. She smelled pleasantly like perfume. You reek, Aura muttered softly, adding that maybe her undead body rotting was to blame. Perhaps because she had caught Momonga instinctively lifting his arms to check if he smelled. Oh my god, he was like, what? Is that me? A dark blue vein stood up on Shaltir's forehead. Oh, come now, you can't say that. Loramunga is undead too. Huh? What are you talking about? Loramunga's not regular undead. Pretty sure he's like super undead or godly undead or something. Hearing Shaltir and Mare express her satisfaction with much an explanation. Oh, right. Momonga felt somewhat insignificant. I don't know what it's like here, but at least in Yggdrasil was just plain undead. More to the point, super undead and godly undead didn't exist. Still, what you said was kinda bad. You think so? Okay then, take two. Maybe it's 'cause of your rotting, dead flesh. Yes, I suppose that will do. Accepting Aura's second take, Shaltir slipped her arms around Momonga's neck to embrace him. Ah, my master, the sole being I cannot conquer. Oh god. Shaltir, you trying to be seductive is very weird to me. Her wet tongue showed itself between her parted red lips. It moved over them as if it were its own separate animal. From her open mouth came sweet-smelling breath. Oh god. All this would have been extremely becoming of a bewitching, beautiful adult. But at her age, something was off. The awkward mismatch was even a bit endearing. In the first place, she wasn't tall enough to... So instead of embracing him, she just seemed like she was trying to hang from his neck. Despite all that, Momonga was unaccustomed to attention from women and was plenty bewitched. He nearly took a step backwards but made up his mind to stand still. Was her personality always like this? I don't know. He didn't change anything about Shaltir, so I don't know. He couldn't get the question out of his mind, but since the one who wrote her backstory was Perorocino, it was entirely possible that this was just how she was. Oh god. That guy loved porn games more than anything, and had even adopted "porn games are my life" as his personal catchphrase. Oh god. Please let my mom hear this. And that good-for-nothing had written the bio of Shaltir Bloodfallen. She was the guardian of levels 1 through 3, and a true vampire, as well as a little girl who'd been given a pile of X-rated video game characteristics. I think that's enough. Shaltir responded to the low, hard voice and sneered at Aura. Oh, hello, Squirt. I didn't see you there. Momonga didn't feel like bothering to point out that they'd just been talking a moment ago. Best not to get involved, Momonga. Ignoring Aura and her twitching, irritated expression, Shaltir addressed Mare. It must be hard for you to have such an odd elder sister. You should get some distance from her as soon as possible. If you don't, you might end up the same way. Mare's face went sickly pale. He knew she was using him to pick a fight with his sister. But Aura smiled. Shut up, Miss Fake Boobs. Ooh, this is gonna be good, guys. Because I don't think we ended up seeing a lot of this in the anime. She dropped a bomb. How'd you know? Ooh, she broke character, Momonga said to himself. There was no sign of her forced, elegant cool. One glance is enough to tell. Look how bizarrely poofy they are. How many layers of padding did you use? What? Shaltir flailed her hands as if to erase the words out of the air. Now she looked her age. Meanwhile, Aura had an evil grin on her face. If you use that much padding, I bet they must shift around when you run. Huh? Eek! Shaltir emitted a strange scream now that she was caught. Bullseye! Your boobs slipped, so that's why you used a gate, so you could get here in a hurry without having to run. Shut it, Pipsqueak. You don't have any. I at least have a little. I'm pretty big. Shaltir frantically fired back, but Aura only grinned even more evilly. Shaltir took a step back as if she had been shoved. The fact that she was trying to inconspicuously shield her chest was kind of sad. I'm still only 76. I've got plenty of time ahead of me. It must be tough being undead with no future. You don't grow. Ugh. Shaltir groaned and retreated farther. She had no comeback for that, and it showed plainly on her face. Aura noted this and stretched her slit-like grin even further. You should be satisfied with what you got. Now that you said it, you can't take it back. Shaltir's gloved hands began to exude a shimmering black haze. Aura had her whips ready to intercept. Before the two of them stood a flustered Mare. Momonga felt like he was watching a scene from the past and couldn't decide whether to stop them or not. Excuse me. Para Rochina, who had created Shaltir, and Bubbling Teapot, who had created Aura and Mare, were brother and sister. Yeah, they were brother and sister. I was about to say, I remember there was a typo in here. I said that they were sisters. But it's actually their brother and sister. They used to have good-natured squabbles sometimes like this. Momonga almost felt like he could see the shadows of his former guildmates fighting back behind the two NPCs. What a racket! Momonga was basking in reminiscence of his old guildmates when the hard, twisted voice of something not human speaking human words stopped Aura and Shaltir's quarrel short. Cocytus! I think. Standing in the direction from which the voice came, who knew how long he'd been there, it was Cocytus. Was a grotesque, throwing a chill into the air. He looked like an 8-foot-tall bipedal insect. If there were such a thing as a combination of an utterly demonic mantis and an ant, it'd probably look like that. From his sturdy tail that was double his height and the rest of his body sprouted countless icicle-like spikes. His horizontally closing lower jaws were surely powerful enough to sever a human arm with no trouble. Two of his arms carried a silver halberd, and the other two held a horrifying yet excellently made mace giving off a sinister black aura and a broadsword so warped it seemed impossible for it to ever be sheathed. He was wrapped in a chill that sparkled like diamond dust, and his light blue exoskeleton was like armor. His back and shoulders bulged like icebergs. This was the guardian of the 5th level, sovereign of the frozen river Cocytus. He struck the ground with the blade of his halberd, and the earth around it slowly froze. You amuse yourselves too much before a supreme being. She's being disrespectful to... I'm just telling the truth. Mari panicked as Shaltir and Aura glared at each other again, eyes fearsomely flashing. Momonga was over it all by now and warned them both in a voice he made deep on purpose. Shaltir, Aura, that's enough playing around for now. Both of them jumped and then hung their heads in unison. I'm sorry. He nodded to generously accept their apology and then turned to the newly arrived figure. Thanks for coming, Cocytus. I come immediately when you call, Supreme One. White breath escaped from between Cocytus' mandibles, and in response came a cracking noise as the moisture in the air was freezing solid. It was a cold on par with the heat of the primal fire elemental. Just being near him was enough to cause all sorts of low-temperature status effects and physical damage. Momonga didn't feel a thing. Though really there was no one in the room who didn't have some way to resist fire, chill, and acid attacks. Have you been bored with no raiders these days? There certainly hasn't been much going on. His mandibles clicked. It sounded like the threatening clicks of an angry hornet, but Momonga chose to think he must be laughing. But that said, I have things to do, so I can't say I've been bored. Oh, things to do? Do you mind telling me what? Training, so that I may be of use to you at any time. Cocytus, not that it was apparent from the way he looked, was a warrior, both personality-wise and by design. Of those in the Great Tomb of Nazarick who used weapons, he had the highest attack power. Makes sense. I mean, the giant bipedal ice bug carrying a halberd, a broadsword, and a mace, I think would be a warrior. To be of use to me? Thanks. Hearing that single word made it all worth it. Oh, it seems Demiurge and Albedo have arrived. Following Cocytus' line of sight, Amonga saw two shadows near the entrance of the arena. Albedo was in front. A man followed behind her as if in attendance. When they had gotten closer, Albedo smiled and bowed deeply to Amonga. The man also gave an elegant bow before speaking. Sorry to keep you all waiting. He was about 6 feet tall, with skin the shade of a suntan. He had Asian features, and his jet black hair was slicked back. The eyes behind his round glasses were not so much slivers as closed. He wore a 3-piece suit with a necktie and had the air of a shrewd businessman or lawyer. Even though he presented himself as a gentleman, he couldn't hide his evil nature. Behind him stretched a silver-plated tail bleh, with 6 spines on the tip. This man scattering dark, flickering flames. Hang on. Dang it. Where did my mouse go? Ah! I move it for a second and I lose it. Was creator of the Inferno, Demiurge. He was the demon who commanded NPC defense operations and the guardian of the 7th floor. This is everyone then. Or Amonga, it seems we're still missing 2. It was a voice that wormed its way into hearts and drew one in with its richness. All Demiurge's words came with a passive skill called Incantation of Influence. It was a power that caused the weak-hearted who heard him to instantly become his puppets. That said, no one in the room was affected. It only worked on targets of level 40 and below, and so all those present merely heard it as a particularly luscious voice and nothing more. Their presence isn't necessary. They've both been assigned to prioritize other tasks. We don't need to interrupt them for this. If that's alright, then. It seems my comrade is not here either. Albedo and Shaltier stopped short. Even Albedo's smile froze. He's only a guard for one part of one of my floors. Yeah. Shaltier forced a smile, and Aura chimed in while Albedo nodded. Ah, the Prince of Fear. Well, we should probably notify the Domain Guardians as well. Please pass the information along to Crimson, Grant, and the others. I'll leave it up to each floor guardian. Prince of Darkness? Or Prince of Fear? Who the heck is that? Someone tell me, please. Did we meet him yet? Or is that Victim? I don't think it's Victim. Because Cocytus is what? The guardian of the 6th floor? And I think... Dang it. I don't remember. Let me know, please. There were 2 types of guardians in the Great Tomb of Nazarick. One was the type that all those before Amonga now were, floor guardians, who were each in charge of 1 or more levels. The other were domain guardians who guarded part of a level. Put simply, domain guardians worked under the floor guardians to protect one section of a level. Almost said section. Since there were so many of them, they were somewhat underappreciated, and in Nazarick the word guardian generally indicated a floor guardian. Once everyone had indicated their understanding of Amonga's order, Albedo spoke. Now then, let us perform the ritual of allegiance. The guardians all nodded, and before Amonga could get a word in, they had arranged themselves with Albedo in front and the other guardians lined up behind her. Their expressions were all stiffly ceremonious. Any hint of a jokey atmosphere had vanished. Shaltier at the end of the line took a step forward. Guardian of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level, Shaltier Bloodfallen. I bow before you, O Supreme One. She dropped to one knee and put a hand over her chest, bowing her head low. After Shaltier, Cocytus stepped forward. Guardian of the... 5th level, Guardian of the 5th level, Cocytus. I bow before you, O Supreme One. He took the same humble posture as Shaltier and bowed to Amonga. Next, the 2 dark elves stepped forward. Guardian of the 6th level, Ora Bella Fiore. I bow before you, O Supreme One. O Guardian of the same, Mara Bella Fiore, I do bow before you, O Supreme One. As expected, they also got down on one knee and bowed their heads low. Shelter, Cocytus, Aura, and Mare. They are built differently, so there should have been some discrepancy in the view of each size of their steps, but their kneeling position formed a straight line. Then Demiurge took a graceful step forward. Guardian of the 7th level Demiurge, I bow before you, O Supreme One. Though his tone was cool, he made an extremely heartfelt bow without breaking his elegant demeanor. Finally, Albedo stepped forward. Captain of the Floor Guardians, Albedo, I bow before you, O Supreme One. Smiling faintly at Momonga, she kneeled in the manner of the other Guardians. But for Albedo, that wasn't the end. With her head bowed, she made her voice carry and gave her last report. Accepting Guardian of the 4th level Gargantua and Guardian of the 8th level Victim. Okay, 8th level is Victim. Okay. The Floor Guardians have gathered to prostrate ourselves before you. Your orders, O Supreme One, we offer our complete devotion to you. Being faced with their 6 bowed heads was practically enough to make him gulp audible, despite a lack of anything to gulp with. The air was tense, or maybe it was only Momonga who felt on edge. I don't know what to do. Neural people probably never experienced something like this even once in their lives. In the confusion, he accidentally activated some of his skills and emitted an aura throughout the area. A halo appeared behind him. Without even the composure to cancel them, he frantically fought to remember everything he'd seen in movies or on TV to get an idea of how to conduct himself. Raise your heads. All of their heads rose together in so crisp a motion that he practically expected to hear a whoosh. It was so simultaneous that he wondered if they'd been practicing. Well then, for starters, I appreciate you all gathering here. Please save your appreciation. We offer you not only our devotion, but our very selves. It is most natural that we should heed your call. None of the other Guardians tried to cut in. As captain, Albedo was truly their unified voice. Seeing all their earnest expressions turned his way, Momonga felt a lump in the throat he didn't even have. The pressure to behave like a ruler was weighing him down, but that wasn't all. His orders would determine their future. He started to feel indecisive. The worry that the Great Tumanazariq might collapse due to a decision he made flitted across his mind. Lord Momonga, you seem irresolute. That is only natural. You must wonder whether it is even worth accepting our help. Her smile had vanished, and a determined look tensed her features. However, if you honor us with your orders, we the Floor Guardians will suffer any trials to carry them out with all our bodies and souls. We vow to serve in such a way as will bring no shame upon our creators, the 41 supreme beings of Ein Zolgon. We vow it. The other Floor Guardians echoed. Albedo in chorus. Their voices were filled with an unstoppable power. Their loyalty was like a priceless diamond, sneering at Momonga for worrying they might betray him. It was as if the darkness before his eyes had vanished in the morning light, and a shiver went through him. He realized how wonderful the NPCs his guildmates had made really were. The radiance of Ein Zolgon's glory days was here now. He was so happy to have the fruits of his guildmates' labors with him that his dignified expression broke. Of course, there was no major change to his bony face, but the beautiful red spark in his eyes burned even more brightly. With no trace of his former anxiety, Momonga spoke smoothly like the guildmaster he was. Wonderful Guardians, it is my firm belief, as of this moment, that you can understand my aims and are capable of accomplishing them without error. He surveyed their faces once more. Now then, there may be some points that are unclear, but I want you to listen carefully. It appears the Great Tumanazariq has unexpectedly become involved in some sort of situation, and it's unclear how it happened. The Floor Guardian's serious expressions didn't flinch. The cause is unclear, but we know for sure that the tomb has been teleported out of the swamps and into a grassy plain. Is there anyone who saw any signs this might happen? Albedo gazed over her shoulders at the faces of each Floor Guardian. After reading their expressions, she said, "No. My apologies, but no one had any idea this would happen." Then I'd next like to hear from each Floor Guardian. Did anything strange happen on your levels recently? Now they spoke up individually for the first time. Nothing strange happened in the 2nd floor, nor in the 6th. Like my sister said. The same goes for 5. Nothing strange happened in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd levels. Lorimunga, I would like to investigate the 4th and 8th levels immediately. Very well, I'll leave that up to you, Albedo, but take care in the 8th level. If something happened there, it is possible you may not have to deal with it. After Albedo deeply bowed in acknowledgement, Shaltir spoke. Then I'll investigate the surface. Oh, I already sent Sebas out to explore the surface. Albedo had been there when he given the orders, so she wasn't surprised, but the others couldn't hold their shock back from appearing on their faces. The Great Tumanazrik had 4 NPCs with superior melee combat skills. Kokaitis had the highest attack power when armed. Clad in heavy armor, Albedo had no equal when it came to guarding. Sebas was the best in a pure fight, and when he showed his true form, his total combat ability probably outstripped the previous 2. That's scary, considering I think he's, a dragon? Or something like that? Let me know. I can't wait to see... I want to see that in the anime so badly. Him in his true form, that would be cool. Then there was one who outstripped all 3 of them. The Guardian's shock must have been at the fact that Umunga would send Sebas, who boasted no weaknesses and all manner of strengths in a head-on fight, out to do a task as simple as reconnaissance. It took us as a sign of how wary he was about the unusual situation they were in, and the reality of the crisis began to sink in for them too. Well, it's about time to wrap up, but Umunga caught sight of Sebas jogging toward them. When he arrived, he slowly lowered himself to one knee like the others. Lorimunga, I apologize for my lateness. No matter. More important, what is it like out there? Sebas looked up and cast a momentary glance at the Guardians. This is an emergency. It's only natural that we should inform the floor Guardians. Yes, my lord. For a half-mile radius, it's all grassy plains. I cannot confirm any man-made structures. I saw a number of small animals, as one might expect to be living in such a place. But there were no humanoids or large life forms. Are the small animals monsters? No, the creatures did not appear to have any combat skill ability to speak of. Aha. And this grass, is it in the shape, sharp, stiff type that stabs you as you walk through it? No, just plain meadow grass. There's nothing special about it. You didn't see any floating castles or anything? No, none. There was no sign of any man-made light in the sky or on the ground. I see. A starry sky, then. Nice work, Sebas. Umunga expressed his appreciation, but felt a bit discouraged about how little information he'd been able to get. Still, now he more or less knew that this were not in the world of Yggdrasil, although there remained the question of how he could use his in-game equipment and cast spells like usual. It wasn't clear why they'd been teleported or where they'd ended up, but it seemed like they should raise Nazarik's alert level. They might be in someone else's territory. Suddenly, taking up residence in someone else's territory without permission would surely invite anger. They'd be lucky if anger was as far as it went. Guardians, first raise the alert level by 1 on each floor. There are too many unknowns right now, so don't let your guard down. Take any raiders alive. Capturing them without injury would be ideal. It goes without saying, but we don't want to complicate things while we're in this uncertain situation. Everyone bowed together in understanding. Next, I'd like to hear about how things operate here. Albedo, how do you share security information among floors? In Yggdrasil, they'd just been NPCs operating according to their programming. There shouldn't have been any movement of information or mobs among floors. The security of each level is left up to the individual guardians, but we do have a system for sharing information which Demiurge oversees. Umunga was slightly surprised, but then nodded his head in satisfaction. Splendid. Defense Operation Coordinator Demiurge and Floor Guardian Captain Albedo, I trust you to work toward a more perfect system. Yes, my lord. To clarify, we can accept levels 8, 9, and 10 from the system. Victim has 8 covered, so that one is fine. Actually, I am making 8 off limits. I take back the order I gave you earlier, Albedo. As a general rule, only those of my express permission will be allowed to enter the 8th level. Undo the seal that prohibits direct travel between the 7th and 9th levels, and let's have the security system cover the 9th and 10th levels as well. Is that alright with you? Albedo's astonishment was plain on her face. Behind her, Demiurge's eyes opened wide, and he said what they were actually thinking. You will permit lowly minions to enter the domain of the Supreme Ones? In this situation as serious as this? Minions were the monsters that members of Iron Soul Gone did not create, the mobs that spawned automatically. Come to think of it, with very few exceptions, there were no minions in the 9th or 10th levels. Momonga wasn't sure what to say. Albedo seemed to think those areas were some kind of holy ground, but the truth couldn't have been further from that. The reason there were no mobs assigned to the 9th level was simply that by the time a group of raiders broke through the 8th level where all the strongest monsters were, they figured they didn't have much chance of winning, so they decided they would just lurk in the throne room like proper villains. I have no problem with it. This is an emergency, so let's up our guard. Understood. I'll choose the very best, most noble minions for the job. Amunga nodded and turned to look at the twins. Is it possible to hide the Great Tomb of Nazarick somehow? I'm not sure if illusions alone will cut it, and thinking about the energy required to maintain something like that gives me a headache. Aura and Mari put their heads together. After a moment, it was Mari who spoke. It will be difficult to use magic if we need to hide all the parts that are above ground, but maybe if we covered the walls with dirt and grow plants out of it. You intend to soil the walls of glorious Nazarick? Albedo addressed Mari over her back. Her tone was sweet and gentle, but the emotions contained were confrontational. Mari's shoulders jerked. None of the other guardians spoke, but they all seemed to be in agreement with Albedo. To Amunga, however, her comments were unnecessarily heckling. They weren't in a position to be concerned with such things. Albedo, don't interrupt. I'm talking with Mari. Even he wasn't surprised at how deep his voice was. My apologies, Lord Amunga. She bowed low, her face frozen in fear. Sebas and the guardians' expressions instantly stiffened as well. Although the reprimand was directed at Albedo, they must have taken it personally. From the sudden shift in mood, Amunga realized he'd said too much and regretted it, but he continued his discussion with Nari. Is it possible to cover the walls with dirt and hide us? Yes, that is, if you'll forgive me for doing such a thing. But if we were spotted from a distance, wouldn't a huge amount of dirt seem out of place? Sebas, are there any hills in the area? No, unfortunately, it seems to be flat. However, I can't say for sure that I didn't overlook something due to it being nighttime. I see. But if we want to conceal our walls, Mari's plan is a brilliant one. What if we mounted up dirt in the area to create dummy hills? In that case, we would stand out a little less. Okay, Mari and Aura work together on that. Go ahead and take anything you need from the levels. We'll conceal the tall parts you can't cover later with illusions that work on anyone, not from Nazarick. Yes, sir. Understood. How long have I recorded? Come on. Here we go. Okay. I'll end this off here. I'll see you guys next time.